What is the plan right now for Rhea Ripley? Because I thought it was one thing, and instead it feels like we're getting something else. Doesn't feel like it's going to be Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky. At the very least, not going to be that in a singles match, because Ripley and Sky will face on the Raw after Elimination Chamber. I could see if Io Sky got a title match next week and was screwed and still did the thing that I expected her to do, which was beat somebody up and just enter the Elimination Chamber and take somebody else's spot in the Elimination Chamber. But she's facing Io Sky on the March 3rd episode of Monday Night Raw after Elimination Chamber, which means that's after we get a number one contender for Rhea Ripley's Women's World Championship at WrestleMania. So there's no way that Io Sky is going to go over Rhea Ripley with the last PLE before Mania already in the rearview mirror. So that leads me to this. Who wins the Chamber? Who's going to win the Chamber match, and who makes the most sense for WrestleMania for Rhea Ripley? Is it Bayley? No, that doesn't fit. She's doing a lot of work right now with NXT talent, going up against Roxanne Perez, going up against Julia this Saturday at Vengeance Day. So it doesn't make sense for it to be Bayley. Alexa Bliss feels like that's too soon to have her go to SmackDown, win the Elimination Chamber, and then compete for a Raw Women's World Championship. Doesn't fit. Bianca Belair, that makes a little bit of sense. She's undefeated at WrestleMania. Her versus Rhea Ripley is a one-on-one match that should happen at some point on one of the big four pay-per-views, but it still feels like something has to give with the story between her and Jade Cargill. So maybe that feels like it's out of the picture. Raquel Rodriguez, Roxanne Perez, that's a Elimination Chamber qualifying match. Neither of them make sense. Chelsea Green versus Naomi, that's another Elimination Chamber qualifying match. That doesn't really make sense either. And you're left with one person, Liv Morgan. Again, I'm not sure anybody is interested in seeing yet another matchup between Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan one-on-one for the Women's World Championship. But in the same way that I talked about earlier, saying Solo Sikoa deserves a spot at WrestleMania in a headlining match, whether that's him versus Jacob Fatu or him versus somebody else, Solo Sikoa should be featured on WrestleMania. It feels like the same thing should be true about Liv Morgan. She was the superstar of the year in my eyes in WWE in 2024. So she deserves to get an opportunity at WrestleMania. Because if you remember, she wasn't on WrestleMania last year. She didn't have that opportunity. She didn't get that chance. This year, she deserves one of the top spots. And I think winning in the Chamber would put her in line for one of those top spots. But like I mentioned, it doesn't feel like anybody, including WWE, is interested in putting Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley in another singles match, in another singles title match, where they've already run this entire rivalry, this entire feud into the ground. They just did it on the Raw debut on Netflix. They're not going to do it on WrestleMania. However, a triple threat seems a little more likely. Now, I mentioned it's Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley on the Raw after Elimination Chamber for the Women's World Championship. It feels like Io Sky is very close to going back to her Damage Control days, where she becomes a heel, where she becomes somebody who turns on her friends. Well, she got screwed out of the Elimination Chamber. If she gets screwed out of this match and screwed out of a WrestleMania opportunity on Monday Night Raw, whether that be via Rhea Ripley doing something, whether that be via Liv and Raquel costing Io Sky because they want to take it away from Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, something's going to happen in that match that makes Adam Pearce put Io Sky in the matchup at WrestleMania. And instead of Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky, it feels like it's going to be Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan versus Io Sky in a triple threat match at WrestleMania. That's what it feels like they're going right now. Because as of last week, I said, yeah, Ripley versus Sky, it feels like that's the plan. Even though Io Sky had been screwed out of an Elimination Chamber opportunity, it felt like some way, somehow she was going to get in there. Instead, this might be a different way to do it. Again, you look down at some of the other opponents, there's not really any that makes sense for Rhea at WrestleMania. You can make the argument about Bianca, but they really haven't been setting anything up between Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair. Liv Morgan makes the most sense. She just does, to win the Elimination Chamber. And again, her, Io, and Rhea Ripley at Mania, that could tear the house down. That could be a match of the night candidate. We saw what Io and Liv Morgan were able to do yesterday in a tag match on Monday Night Raw. Imagine being given a bigger spotlight and throwing in Rhea Ripley, who's one of the best women superstars in wrestling right now. That would be a great match. And I think that that would be something that you could rival Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton with in the women's world title picture going into WrestleMania. So I hope that's what's happening. Again, I was 0 for 1 because I swung and missed on what I expected whenever I gave my predictions last week. That's what it feels like the plan is now for Rhea Ripley, is a triple threat match with Io and Liv Morgan.